The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
You reached the Benjamin Dixon Show voicemail. Leave your message and we'll respond live on air.
Hi, my name's Aziz from Long Beach, California. I just kind of wanted to know, Benjamin, what you thought of Elizabeth Warren's environmental justice plan. I personally think that it's great that at the extent that we've extended the Overton window so far, that we have mainstream candidates talking about environmental justice. The city that I'm from, Long Beach, California, actually has the worst air quality in the nation. So we've been at the back since we're by the ports and freeways intersecting our city. Air quality has been horrible. So I'm just hoping that if this plan gets implemented, that cities such as Long Beach and all across the community that have been neglected by environmental damage actually get the benefits that they deserve, because a lot of environmental benefits that other places have received tend to be the more richer areas in the nation. So I just hope that now that we're talking about environmental justice, we actually get serious and implement environmental justice for all. Thank you.
Aziz, thanks so much for that call. Welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Show Phone Call Fridays. This is a great question. I'm not really asked about this often. Elizabeth Warren's environmental justice plan seeks to spend about $1.5 trillion over the next decade and concentrating, targeting the efforts in marginalized communities, what she's calling vulnerable communities. What I like about this is the fact that this is often something that's left out of the conversation of social justice, right? But when the rubber meets the road, some of the most vulnerable communities presently and in the future for climate disaster, and not just climate change in general, but also pollution, dumping, toxic waste. I mean, it really hits marginalized communities, because think of it this way. How often do these communities have advocates for them? It's rare. And so not only are we talking about environmental justice in terms of man-made toxic dumping and pollution, air pollution in these cities, but we're also talking about long-term effects of climate change. If you really consider what the world is going to look like in a few years, the displacement of communities and the concentration of marginalized people even more so, there's for lack of a better word, there's a potential for a cesspool to develop, and not in terms of the people, as conservatives generally would suggest, but specifically in terms of the amount of concentrated waste and toxicity that will be concentrated in those communities. And this is where her plan targets. The Green New Deal in general is a holistic plan, but I think there are some amazing tenets to that plan that we should take into consideration, that we not even take into consideration, right? The Green New Deal, Bernie got on board with it. I think it's a brilliant plan, but I particularly like Elizabeth Warren's environmental justice. I was speaking to an activist here, an older activist here in Atlanta, and his primary work is with the homeless populations. And one of the number one things that he is concerned about is the environment, and as it pertains to the homeless populations. Like, we really don't consider how our environment and how climate change in the long run is going to be devastating for marginalized communities. But he had the foresight to look presently and see how the living conditions, how they're dumped on, how the waste ends up concentrated in these particular communities. And up to that point, I honestly had never slowed down to think of it in those terms. And I'm glad that policy isn't dictated by how much I'm exposed to, because Elizabeth Warren's plan seems aggressive, particularly because it targets the most vulnerable communities. Now, the flip side of it is we often see a lot of effort being placed into wealthier communities, focusing on renewable energies, focusing on sustainability, focusing on conservation. And those communities are preparing for the inevitable. Well, when you have nothing, you can't prepare, and you can't take steps to be prepared when you have nothing, or when you're so locked into the system, working 9 to 5, just barely surviving, that you can't spend the resources or the time to invest in your communities. And I think, not just I think, I'm confident, and I know that we have a commitment, we have a responsibility to all Americans and to this world, quite frankly, to do our part. And this is just a small part, mind you. Like I said, I mentioned the Green New Deal. We need a holistic approach to addressing the oncoming climate crisis, as well as the immediate issues that marginalized communities face when it comes to pollution, dumping, et cetera, et cetera. All right, next voicemail.
Yo, what's good, man? It's Q, man, from Richmond, VA. What's good, bro? I was trying to lead this message in your email, but I thought this would just be easier. How do we feel about trying to actually do something practical to affect the election, in terms of, you have Joe Biden, who is obviously getting that Obama support from all the black grandmas, aunties, mommies, and shit in the South, and across the country too. Just black people in general seem to gravitate more towards Biden in terms of polls, and that, the name recognition and whatnot. But how do we feel about doing something practical where all the millennials, all the Gen Z people, my generation, we try to call at least 3 family members, grandma, auntie, and, if you don't live with your mom or somebody else who's like a matriarch in the family, or patriarch in the family, could be grandpa, could be the uncle, who knows.
Right.
But people who hold weight within your family, if we call them and make the case that it's Bernie over Biden, and this is all the things that Biden has done and said, and this is how Bernie's policies would, actually work for us and whatnot. Or, if you're a Warren fan, I don't know why you would be, that's fine. But you could do that too, you know what I'm saying? If those are your 2 alternatives, or whoever your alternative is. But I'm speaking more specifically to the Bernie crowd, because they seem to be feeling as if he's the best candidate. And I think, in my estimation, I would agree. So if we agree that Bernie's the best candidate, then we have to, engage in some form of praxis. So if people are not going to get in the streets and really lay it out on the line, then I think the first step has to be, let's talk to grandma, talk to grandpa, talk to uncle, auntie, and let's try to actually shift something. Yeah. That's just my thought. Let me know what you think about that. If that's practical. Are black people too invested in Joe Biden and the Biden legacy in the Obama years? That's also something. But that's pretty much it. Peace, yo.
Yo, I absolutely love that voicemail. As you started talking, I started formulating, okay, it's a good idea. What do we do? And then you gave the solution right there. Everybody, make it your purpose, week in and week out. Like, if you really mean business, if you're really serious about Bernie or Warren, and I like Warren, so I guess Q is talking to me. Why would you like Warren? I like Warren. I liked Warren before I liked Bernie. But I actually, Bernie is still my first choice. It's Bernie and Warren. Either way, whoever you like, we agree that Joe Biden is the devil. We agree that we got to make sure that he does not get the nomination. Because 1, I don't think he could beat Trump. But number 2, even if he did beat Trump, we're talking about going back to a sense of complacency that helped lead to Trump. So that being the case, if you really believe that, then I think every week, and we should check in with each other, right? There's accountability. What's action without accountability? We need to talk. How many people did we talk to of the older generation? Our mamas, our aunts, our grandmamas, if you have any left living, because I'm an old dude and none of my grandparents are alive, but my aunts, all my great aunts that are still living, talk to them about the problem with Joe Biden. You can't argue with them. I mean, listen, the dynamics of your matriarchy or your patriarchy. You know what you can get away with. My suggestion is that you go humbly and you go like you don't act like you know everything. Every now and then, even if they don't have a point, just kind of say you have a good point. But, right, I'm not saying take a weakened position in there because you have to win. You have to convince them. But part of convincing is identifying and listening. So that's just my 2 cents. But you know the dynamics of your family. But if we all do this in a very tangible way, and we organize this via social media, and we all check in with each other via social media, then I think there could be a real tangible change. I think that's what it's going to have to be, because, you know, you are going to have to overcome this notion that you don't know anything, right? And here's how you overcome that. If they love you, then they're going to be impressed by how much you actually do know. If you can present what you actually do know and the wealth of knowledge that you do know, and you can present it in love, because your grandmama ain't going to have you, you know, you cannot talk to your grandmammy the way you talk to folks on social media. That's all I'm saying. But I love the idea, and I think everyone should get involved with it. I'm going to start this week, and I'll check in with you all on Twitter and let you know how many people I convinced that Biden was not the way to go. All right, more voicemails when we come back.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.
And as always, I'd like to take this moment in the show to thank our patrons, our fabulous, the people who make the show possible for everyone else. I heard that on a podcast today, and I'm like, ooh, that's some shade, but I guess not. I guess it's not really shade. You know, you guys, those of you who like the show and you can't afford to, because trust me, I know very personally and very intimately what it's like to not have $5 to spare at the end of the month. So this isn't shade in the sense of throwing shade at you and like, oh, you can't afford to support. This just says that there are those who can afford to support. And because they are supporting, you know, I take a little minute to thank them. So special thanks to our brand new, our newest patron, Ahern J. I don't really know how to pronounce your name. I don't know if it's Ahern or Ahern. I'll try both of them. One of them has to work. Thank you so much for becoming a patron. You rock. Next voicemail.
Hey, Ben. This is Gerald calling from Southeast Portland. I started hearing you on Sam Cedar, and then I started following you on Twitter. Then I started listening to your podcast. Then I became a monthly contributor to your work, and will continue to do so as long as it's financially okay for me. But whatever your opinion is, which I agree with most of the time, or pretty much all the time, I will always support you. Love your work. I am calling just to see what you think about the Obama presidency, because I was pretty disappointed through it all. Just, you know, with looking forward, not back, you know, with the Bush administration and their crimes and so on. You know, Goldman Sachs and his financial advisors, drones, deportations, and throughout his whole presidency, just the Republican, just complete, just shutting down anything he wanted to do, the lack of his trying to, you know, get up on the bully pulpit and thunder against this injustice.
Mm-hmm.
But then I started thinking, like, and I don't know if this is crazy or not, but I started thinking, like, what it was like for Jackie Robinson, you know, breaking the color barrier, and just like how throughout everything that he had to endure, he had to always, you know, he just had to take it, basically. It was like Obama was in kind of like legacy mode from the moment he was elected. I don't know if that's crazy or not, or if that makes any sense. And I just almost wonder if that's kind of what kept him from maybe doing some of the things we all had hoped the day, that night he got elected. I just remember that night, just that feeling when he got elected. How good, it just seemed like the country maybe was finally going to start healing, and it just kind of went downhill over the next 8 years. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling. Dude, I love you, and I'd love to hear what you think about that. Hope you have a good one. Peace. Thanks.
Man, I love you guys too, man. So Obama is a mixed bag. And here's what I mean. I have probably some of the most robust critiques of Obama. But I still have a special place. There's still a special place in my heart for Obama for the exact reasons you outlined. I mean, the barrier that he broke through, while it ended up only being symbolic, like literally, it was basically just symbolism. I mean, you can't rob it of that symbolism, right? In the history of this country, there still was something there. And that's why you can't tell black folks, especially not older black folks who were alive during the civil rights movement. You can't tell them shit about Obama. You can't. But at the same time, you look at the holistically over the 8 years and you see, you listed it, there was no accountability for the Bush administration. And now we see the residuals of that. Not only was there no accountability for the Bush administration, but now the Trump administration has gone one step further and they feel like they are above the law. That's a part of Obama's legacy. You can't deny that. The droning, here's the thing. People hate it when Cornel West said this, but it's true. Obama was the blackface of American imperialism, and American imperialism is rooted in white supremacy. And is it fair? Now, here are the questions. Here are the questions we should ask ourselves. Is it fair for us to have expected Barack Obama to save us from all of the history and legacy of America? Could Obama by himself as a Superman have accomplished the reformation of American empire, right? Could he fix all of racism by himself? Could he fix capitalism by himself? Which goes to your next point. You have excellent points. Well, he couldn't have done it by himself, but he didn't even try to leverage the bully pulpit the way Donald Trump is leveraging it for evil, right? So that's extremely frustrating. No, he could not have done it by himself, but he didn't even try to leverage the people. He went in and he became your standard fare politician. Now, let me tell you, this is what happens. It's an overall theme from the book, The Guns of August, right? Where you're fighting the next war, the current war, with the previous war's technology. Basically, the overall theme is you're fighting the next fight with the last fight's technology, if that makes sense. Barack Obama was the perfect politician for pre-Reagan society. I hate to go back that far, but honestly, both Bill Clinton, I think Clinton's was more intentional. I think Clinton was the exact type of president he wanted to be. Barack Obama was trying to be the type of president that he had in his mind, but the time was up for that. Time was completely up for that. Maybe he wanted to be a JFK styled president, but that was decades ago, right? I mean, I'm pausing for emphasis here. Like, honestly, that's so outdated. Look at the type of president that we have right now. Look how he's able to galvanize the troops, how he's able to get policies passed. He was able to do everything he wanted to do almost in 2 years' time, and made irrevocable changes to this country. And the best that we got out of Barack Obama was Obamacare, which is a conservative piece of legislation. So in that regard, he's a huge letdown. But he's also, you know what? I'm not going to make him the milestone of my critique of America, right? This is a question that I ask myself quite often. Up until a certain point, what did we expect black people to do but to aspire to be the head of an empire? There was always a revolutionary spirit in America. Yes, absolutely. But right next to, parallel with the revolutionary black spirit that has been in this country forever, was a parallel track of people who were like, okay, we're here. This is supposed to be our home. Okay. We, all men are created equal. Okay. Yeah. We're going to test that. And they went all the way to the White House. That was a track that is undeniable in America, period. I mean, quite honestly, most of us who fancy ourselves radical have to challenge we're challenged by that notion. We're challenged by the idea of being a radical outside of the system or being successful in the system that we're surrounded by and we see every single day. I mean, the temptation is huge. And so what else was Barack Obama supposed to do but aspire to be the leader of an empire? And not, really shake things up too much, because, what they do with people who shake things up too much. Oh, and you're the first black president, So I'm just talking at this point, but I don't put too much at the feet of Barack Obama because, one, He was exactly almost what I expected him to be. No, strike that. He was everything that I expected him to be after he appointed Timothy Geithner. Once I saw he appointed Timothy Geithner, I knew the jig was up, and I knew that he was going to be your kind of standard fare president. It didn't change. It didn't change whether or not I wanted to support him, because, I mean, honestly, we have this really twisted situation in America where it's like you either cheer for the status quo, which I would firmly say the Democratic establishment represents. You either cheer for the status quo or you unleash the hounds of the death cult that is the Republican Party. That is a horrible place to be in this country, and that's what we're trying to change in the 2020 election cycle.
Hey, Ben, this is Chris over in Greenville. I don't really have a question or anything. Just want to say that I really enjoy your show. I think you're doing great work, and I'm looking forward to that book. So thanks. Have a good one. Bye.
Chris, thank you so much for that call. I am looking forward to it, too. I kind of hit a stumbling block today. This is what happens when you write. I've written a lot. I've written a book before. It was a nonfiction book. But I've written a book before, and I've written plenty of articles, and I've written a lot of short stories. Just I never published the short stories, and I'm looking forward to this book. And that's all I want to say about it. Except I will describe the fact that it is a political science. It's based in politics, but it's a fiction book. It's I don't expect it to be groundbreaking or world changing. I try to temper my own expectations because we all suffer from a bit of delusions of grandeur. I mean, honestly, you kind of have to survive in America. You kind of have to believe in yourself a little bit more than you probably should. So I think the book is going to be phenomenal, but I'm trying to temper my own expectations and say, hey, at a minimum, I'm getting it done and I'm going to put it out. And I think there will be some things in there for everyone to chew on and think about and consider. If I can do that much, if I can pull that much off, then I have to consider it. I will consider it a success. But that's it, man. Thanks so much for the calls, everyone. I love to hear from you. We're going to get back to doing this more and more and more. There's so many things that's happening in the news. I was on Sam Cedar today, and we discussed in great detail Syria as well as the impeachment proceedings. So if you want some hardcore news and you want it from me, then go check out the episode from Sam Cedar today. It was about a 30-minute conversation where we talked about what's going on with Syria, northern Syria, Turkey, the Kurds. And I just found out a few minutes ago that several ISIS fighters escaped as a result of this action. And I don't want to, I wanted to leave this only with phone calls, but I have to say this, the fact that any president, this is the problem with the American presidency, but particularly with Donald Trump, because he knows how to exploit the weaknesses of the American presidency. And when I say weaknesses, I don't mean weaknesses in their power, but weaknesses for the sake of humanity, right? They're vulnerable. They're spaces in the American presidency that they have the ability to destroy human life without any accountability. And that's what Donald Trump has stepped into, especially with unleashing ISIS on the world. So if you want to hear that full conversation, go over to the Majority Report where we go into great detail. I have to cover, I know it's not the most popular topic, but I have to cover this topic of the Kurds because it's a human issue. It's a humanity issue. Two, it's an honor issue. And I don't talk about that a lot here, but above all else, I'm a man of my word. I will and I have fallen on my sword before for the purposes of my principles. And I have followed the Kurdish fighters, whether it be the SDF or the YPG, the Peshmerga. I know I'm pronouncing it wrong, and that's okay. That's just how I pronounce it. But I've been following them for quite some time and had quite a bit of respect for their ideology, for their fighting, for their sacrifice. And so even though it's not the most popular topic right now, it's near and dear to my heart because of the human aspect and the fact that it's one thing for us to be there's a line from a movie and I want to get the line right and the movie right, so I might pause, but I think it essentially says I might be a bastard, and actually it just came to me. Dusk Till Dawn, Quentin Tarantino, George Clooney's character at the very end, he said, I may be a bastard, but I'm not a effing bastard. And America may be a bastard of a nation, but we did not have to stoop to this level of treachery and betrayal of actually good people. It's not the first time we betrayed the Kurds, but I would argue that this is the greatest betrayal of them all. So, pulling myself from that sad point, I'm going to be covering it. I'm going to be covering it until we see the end of it. But then, in the meantime, keep your phone calls coming. Keep your head up. Do something fun over the weekend. Don't let this stuff get you down. Do something positive. Call your neighbors, call your friends, call your aunties, like Q said. Call them and tell them why Joe Biden is not the way. Anybody but Joe Biden at this point. Do that. And then once you've done that, go out, look at the sun, go out at night, look at the stars. If you drink, get you a little sip. If you don't, drink your nice, beverage, cooling beverage, whether it be lemonade or something. Do something relaxing. Because all this stuff that we're involved in will take its toll on us if we're not careful. I know you guys love me, but I love you more. See you next time.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.